Good morning. This is Cecil and Blues. Thank you for joining me for this Final Fantasy XIV video. The Tokyo Fan Festival began today, and I'd like to quickly recap the keynote. I was fortunate enough to get home from work in time to see it, and before going into the details revealed by Yoshi P on stage, I would like to take a moment to commend everyone involved in the production of the livestream, and especially Koji Fox for his live English narration. This was a huge step up from past events. Because he was working from a script, there was not the typical start and stop of live translations, which would have, I think, been pretty frustrating for the Japanese crowd that neither wanted nor needed that translation. It may have resulted in some inaccuracy if it was the case that Yoshida went off script while on stage, but I feel that this was the best compromise for both audiences. Again, this was appreciated. Greatly appreciated. It made the keynote accessible for the English-speaking fans, and I hope the team is able to continue with this level of support and communication going forward. As an additional note, just like with the Las Vegas Fan Festival, this footage was behind a paywall, so I'm going to share some screenshots sparingly, but I don't have any audio or video footage to show, so instead we're going to just kind of hang out here in my house, listen to the Starlight Festival orchestration roll, and let the idle camera do what the idle camera does, which I think I saw out of the corner of my eye included some really good shots and some really weird choices, but we'll just kind of let that continue to go here. Let's get on with the show. First of all, surprising no one, Red Mage has been revealed as the first of multiple new jobs coming in Stormblood. They will wield a rapier in their main hand, and they will hold a magical focus whose name has not been finalized yet in their offhand. They will be primarily a ranged magic damage dealer, but melee attacks will, with their sword, will be factored in as well. The short demonstration video showed that the magical focus is attached to the hilt of the mage's sword, and it's flipped over and wielded like a staff when they are doing spellcasting. It was also implied that there would be special movement abilities given to the Red Mage to allow it to move between melee and range to execute their combat rotation, which will feature the Red Mage's signature ability, Chain Cast. This is quite a bit different from the melee combat role I had originally imagined for the Red Mage, and I had originally pictured more of a focus on elementally enchanted weapon strikes, and other red magic themed buffs and debuffs, but it looks like instead it's going to be a combination of black and white magic. They described it as a combination in a way that implied it was a different type of magic, so I don't think it'll be like they get fire and they get lightning and they also get holy. I think instead it's going to be a unique set of spells. I don't know. Hopefully the team is able to create a strong identity for the Red Mage so that it stands out significantly from the Black Mage. The Red Mage will be a standalone job, like other jobs introduced in Heaven's Ward, and it is currently slated to start at level 50. But the Unlock quest will be available in a Realm Reborn zones, allowing new or returning players to unlock this job even if they still have significant story quests to make their way through to get to the new Stormblood zones. So no mention was made of a second job or even confirmation that the number of jobs is 2, so we may get more than 2 jobs coming up. With Red Mage landing in the ranged damage role, I think it increases the possibility that Dancer could appear, because I picture that as a melee damage dealer, especially if that is a Dancer shown off in the teaser trailer. But maybe we still need some sort of tank or healer role to ensure queue times for dungeons are not completely destroyed with the release of Stormblood. But I guess we'll have to still wait and find out. The next segment of the presentation recapped most of the announcements that were at the Las Vegas Fan Festival, but I would be remiss if I did not mention at this point that Yoshi P left the stage during a video presentation, and when he returned, he was wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt. He commented that there was probably already a Reddit thread trying to figure this out. Now, if you're not familiar with the history of this, back before Heavensward, during the first Fans Festival, he came out wearing a Batman t-shirt, which was a subtle hint towards the Dark Knight job. At the second Fan Festival, he came out wearing a 007 shirt, which was a little bit more of a stretch to the Machinist, where people had confirmed, like, oh, guns are definitely being added. So that led then to the last Fan Festival, which I covered, and I mentioned that he wore a Scarlet Witch t-shirt, which implied the Red Mage was coming. Now, this one, the theories are all over the place, and yes, there is a Reddit thread. So if you're interested, you want to dig into it, then head to Reddit and become part of the conversation. But I've seen theories such as the Puppet Master, because the webs that come from Spider-Man's hands, well, they could be like marionette strings. I saw Blue Mage, because the way that Spider-Man got his powers was to be attacked by a spider, and that he learned in the same way that Blue Mages do. I saw a connection that went Spider-Man, Spider Silk, Silk Dresses, Dancer. But the gold medal in logical gymnastics has got to go to the person who suggested that the Spider-Man trilogy was directed by Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi sounds like samurai, and I tell you what, I honestly cannot argue with that logic. That's pretty good. It's pretty solid. And wow, idle camera, great shot. Alright, moving on. Oh, that's prettier. Okay, all that speculation is just kind of ridiculous, time-wasting stuff, to be honest. It's 100% possible that Yoshi P was straight up trolling the community, and that this means absolutely nothing. So, let's move on. Just going back for a moment, for the record, I am still 100% on team hashtag one monk, one dancer. Let's move on. The recap contained no new information. It was all the things discussed previously. There'll be new zones, there'll be new story, there'll be new skills, new class armors, the level cap is being increased to 70, there will be skill and battle changes, and there will be a new housing ward, there will be an inventory expansion. No explanation or details on any of these features was provided. Instead, they freed up 20 minutes for the presentation to talk about one of the most exciting new features to be added to an MMO in 2017. Something so groundbreaking and out of the box that it will be hard for me to summarize its impact while also containing my excitement. Alright, I'm preparing myself for this. With the release of Stormblood, characters in Final Fantasy XIV will, at long last, be able to swim. I'll pause for a moment while you let the enormity of that sink in. I want you to really immerse yourself in the possibilities. This is brilliant technology. So I'm going to go over it step by step, just like Yoshida did, painstakingly over 20 minutes. I hope that I can do it justice in just the short time that I have with this video. As your character approaches a body of water that is suitable for swimming, not all water will be suitable for swimming, some water is quite shallow, they will begin swimming. Yoshida confirmed that there will be no load time or special action required. It will just happen dynamically. While swimming, your character will move slightly slower than their normal movement speed. Ground mounts cannot enter the water, but flying mounts will be able to fly over any water that you would be able to swim in if it's in a flying enabled zone. Actually, I may correct that. You may be able to fly over the top of water that you can swim in with a flying mount, even in old zones, such as like Costa del Sol. We may have to check into that one. All right, continuing on. There will be areas in the new Stormblood zones where, oh, I love this, where your swimming experience goes even deeper. Oh, got ahead of myself. There we go. You'll be able to dive under the depths and explore those bodies of water. While diving, you'll be able to ride any flying mount, which will increase your speed. Because you are the Warrior of Light and you live in the magical world of Eorzea, you don't need to worry about holding your breath. Part of the quest to unlock diving will provide you a magical way to breathe underwater. There will be no combat underwater, but you will be able to interact with friendly NPCs and objects, including gathering nodes. This is the new future we live in, ladies and gentlemen. What could be the next groundbreaking innovation coming in 2019? A continuous world with no load times? I wouldn't hold your breath. Okay, I'll admit I probably took that joke a little bit too far. Let's get down to brass tacks. I don't miss swimming. It's not a feature that I really need in my MMO. Back in 1.0, you couldn't jump, and that was absolutely comical for a game released in 2010. But swimming, never really that big of a deal. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a pointless bullet to put on a box. It doesn't really add much to the world. More concerning to me is that adding it definitely took a lot of work. Significant development time that had to be at the expense of other features. I can't imagine that effort paying off in any meaningful way for how I play Final Fantasy XIV. In fact, I'm a little concerned that, much like Vashir in World of Warcraft, it will be shoehorned into the experience to justify the work that went into it. I'm sorry to spend so much time on what is honestly a very minor feature. If they wouldn't have spent 20 minutes talking about it, I wouldn't have given it really much regard myself. But once they established swimming, they introduced the first beast tribe, which we saw a little bit ago when I accidentally hit the wrong button, and as you can tell, I've looked away from my mic in order to, there we go, find the right button. Alright, they are the Ananta, which are a species of Lamia, and they live in the mountains. They are under the heel of the Empire, and I guess we can assume that we'll be maybe trying to recruit them to our rebellion. We were also introduced to their primal, Lakshmi, Lady of Bliss. She is referred to as the Goddess Lakshmi. Her relation to the goddess Sophie was alluded to as a mystery that we may discover through the main story, along with perhaps a unique method of summoning her. She is not an original primal, like Ravana was, but she is fairly obscure. I believe she only appeared in Final Fantasy VI. The next section of the presentation cut to what looked like an underground bunker where they are holding Nobuyumatsu prisoner. He reported that he was hard at work on the theme for Stormblood, I hope that people analyze the video for any coded messages and cries for help, because it looked bad. it's the one thing that I didn't grab a screenshot of that I wish I had. If you've played any of the game Her Story, it looked like that. Like just this nondescript room where he was being held prisoner. It really honestly looked like that. He did say he would be in Germany, so, like, there may be a chance to save him. I hope people can organize, and, you know, get him separated from his guards, and maybe he'll one day be able to see his family again. Let's move on. The 8-man raid series will be centered around the Omega weapon. And that's the item that Nero has been obsessing over since the end of the story in A Realm Reborn. In particular, at the end of the Crystal Tower story, I think Nero starts digging around for the Omega weapon. So this is a great choice. I'm really excited for it. I was slightly concerned due to some language Yoshida used during the presentation. He made it a point to mention that this will be more connected to the story than raids in the past, and he assured everyone that you would not have to participate in the raid in order to complete the main story. Now, why that's concerning to me is I worry that it's a note or an implication that we may return to the 1 difficulty setting for the 8-person raids with a focus on world-first communities and not on the casual community. I would be very disappointed to lose the normal setting for the 8-person raids. I thought it was incredibly well balanced. I thought it was successful and well received. It was more engaging than World of Warcraft's looking for raid difficulty, which is laughably boring, but and unrewarding also. Whereas the Final Fantasy implementation includes a fair amount of fun. You have to follow the fight mechanics. It just doesn't. It's not rock hard balance on being perfect with your rotation and doing a maximum number of damages, or having the best gear. And I like that. I think that is a good space, and I hope we don't lose it. But I haven't heard any other commenters jump to this conclusion, so I may just be reading too much into it. So I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it. I'll wait for confirmation. We'll get something on it in the future. Then, to introduce the 24-man raid, they brought out some special guests, and those were like Japanese rock star developers, and they're going to be joining as guest developers on the Final Fantasy XIV team. The first person introduced was Yasumi Matsuno, and again, I'm pronouncing these as they are presented from the research I did, and you know, I'm probably saying their names in the English way. I may have their first and last names backwards. I apologize. I'm not personally familiar with these developers, but Yasumi Matsuno is well known for his work on Ogre Battle, Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy Tactics, Vagrant Story, Final Fantasy XII, Terra Battle, and others. The second guest was, and this person I've never heard of before, Kita Amiya? I hope I'm saying that name at least remotely close. He is known for his work on the Onimusha series and Shin Megami Tensei 4, where he was a creature designer. And among other things, he is probably more well known in Japan for his work on television and film, particularly his work on the Kamen Rider series, as well as his current project, Garo. Garo is a thing I had never heard of until tonight, but it kind of looks like Power Rangers for adults. It might be, I don't know, Japan's Game of Thrones. It maybe is just an incredible nerd thing that only nerds care about. I don't know. Again, I had never heard of it before, but I sure heard a lot about it tonight because he was also the special guest on the live letter, which I will cover in a separate video. Anyway, so these guys are working on the raid series for Stormblood, and it will be called Return to Ivalice, which will include many references and connections to Final Fantasy XII and Final Fantasy Tactics. This is great timing, with the re-release of Final Fantasy XII hitting the PS4 next year, and it's always a good time to remind people how simple and beautiful Final Fantasy Tactics was. I personally hope it's more a callback to the first Final Fantasy Tactics as opposed to the world where Final Fantasy XII takes place. Maybe they'll do some sort of merging. I don't know. It's interesting to me because I feel like the world of Final Fantasy Tactics, the original one, the original Ivalice, fits more into the Final Fantasy XIV world, but Final Fantasy XII is much more popular. And, you know, people love their bunny girls. I don't know how much people like the bunga, but, you know, this is an opportunity to add new races and stuff like that. So, you know, if they can justify making these character models, then it might allow them to fully implement them as a new playable race. But let's move on to the final section of the presentation, which introduced us to the Collector's Edition for Stormblood. And I apologize, I really didn't get a good shot of the physical Collector's Edition, but it will include a high-quality statuette of the expansion's villain, Xenos, as well as an art book, a cloth map of Eorzea, and a decal for your car or computer tower, or I thought I heard Yoshida say a phone, but it looks pretty big, so unless your phone is the size of a large tablet, I'd say it wouldn't fit. But anyway, that's all going to come in a very large box because of the statue, and that box will feature the Amano artwork for Stormblood. The digital items include, and they'll be included in both the physical and digital collector's edition. The big one, I think, is the Sildra mount, which will be based on the Hydra from Final Fantasy V. It's the signature summon of Ferris. The other items are a Bart's minion and a cosmetic weapon for Red Mages, which has a Chocobo theme. Pre-orders for Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood will begin on January 24th, although no price was given for the stuff yet. And then there was a little, like, kind of cringy comic moment where they brought out the CEO of Square Enix and they confirmed a release date. So the release date is tentatively set for June 20th. It's almost exactly 2 years after release of Heavensward, which is a pretty good pace, to be honest. I don't know, they may be able to fudge this if they get behind schedule with early access, or maybe a trial or something, you know, to kind of hold us over. I'm trying to think of how things went as we went into Heavensward. Now, it feels like a lot was announced. And I sure talked about it for a while. Where are we at? We had about 23 minutes, which is longer than my last take. But it also feels like this was pretty light on information. I mean, let's think about it. We already knew that Red Mages were going to be the first job. The identity of the Beast Tribes and Primals are, I mean, it's neat information, but it's less important to me than the details on the changes to the battle system and the improvements to the UI, the enhancements to the player inventory. Those all remain as just kind of whispers in the wind currently. It looks like we'll be waiting until February for more details, and, to be honest, we may not even get really too much then, because Part 2 of Patch 3.5 is slated for March, so the live letter that is presented in Germany will probably focus on 3.5 Part 2 instead of on 4.0, so we could be stuck with this level of ambiguity until April, and then we'll start really getting a fleshed out view of what's coming in Stormblood. I'm thinking back to the release of Heavensward, and they were really cagey with information. We didn't really know what a machinist was going to do until we could play a machinist. So I guess, you know, that's where we're at. I don't know what's left to say at this point. I guess post below if you're excited for swimming. But you can tune in later on the channel. I'll have thoughts on the live letter, which focused on 3.5. And I thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you have a great day.